Okay, aloha everyone, and welcome to today's Next Steps program. And today we are delighted to have Natalie Kahn, who will be talking about um, AI resources for librarians. But before we launch into the introduction for Natalie, I'd also like to mention that we have a program in February. On February 19th, we'll be having fundraising in uneasy times. So we'll have a couple of speakers talking about fundraising, overcoming the fundraising challenges of the times in which we are currently living. So I'm delighted to introduce Natalie Kahn, who is the instruction librarian at Leeward Community College. At Leeward, she is active on the faculty senate and the curriculum committee, and she's really interested in exploring how students use AI and how they can develop their research and information literacy skills in the AI era. And she has presented about AI previously for HLA, and she's also a yoga practitioner and teacher and has done a session at I think it was a couple of years ago at the HLA conference. She did a session where we all learned some chair yoga, so that was fun too. So she's a super talented, multi-talented person. So please join me in welcoming Natalie.
Thank you, Gwen. That was a really terrific intro. Wow, I appreciate it. I have a lot to live up to now. I wanted to start by just calling you folks. Thank you so much for coming during probably your lunch hour. You could be, surfing the web, enjoying your desk lunch, but you're here with us. So thank you for sharing your time and your energy. I'm really excited to present today on creating AI tools specifically for folks like us who work in libraries. In my previous presentations, I'm definitely explored more, with students. How are students using, not using, misusing generative AI tools? And so today I thought it would be fun and empowering that, even if you're like me and you don't necessarily think of yourself as the most tech savvy person, that these tools are becoming, increasingly easy to use, and we can get very creative in how we choose to use them. So my plan for today is this. I'm going to keep the presentation fairly short. I have 14 slides. I want it to just wash over you folks. I'm going to probably introduce or reintroduce you to some tools that you may or may not have worked with in the past. I have some screenshots, a little bit of thoughts to share, and then we're going to cut the recording, and I really want to hear from you folks. What are you using or avoiding? What are you doing in your libraries? What do you need? And maybe, together with all these great minds, we can come up with some fun, real life, human to human conversation. Thank you again for coming. I'm going to start my slides. All righty. So let's see. Here we are, creating AI tools and resources for librarians. Velina Mekeloha, my name is Natalie Kahn. I'm the instruction librarian at Leeward CC, and it's definitely not in the job description to use AI tools, but every day, more and more, they're becoming part of our lives. I hope you find this session useful. All right, so we're going to specifically look at platforms like Google's Gemini and ChatGPT to create custom tools and resources that I think will be really helpful for library workers and librarians. At any point, during, after, months and years from now, I would love to hear from you folks. You can email me directly at ncon@hawaii.edu. All right, so just a very quick overview. If you haven't yet had an opportunity to explore Gemini and or ChatGPT, I thought I'd start by just talking about some of their similarities. You don't have to memorize this. It's just good to know what these things are so we know how to use them. So both Gemini and Chat are AI interfaces that use large language models. This is like the brain behind the chatbot. Beyond just simple chatting, which I think most of us have probably dabbled in, these tools can reason. They can generate things like images and reports, and they can perform deep research. And this is something that's really interesting to me as an academic librarian, but I'm sure is interesting no matter what type of library organization you work in. I also want to mention that both of these, part of why I'm exploring them in this session today, They have a free tier and both have paid, pro options where depending on what you're willing to pay monthly or annually, you have access to additional tools or you can use them more often. I also wanted to shout out, this is a book we're currently reading at Leeward Library. So this is an ALA publication, Generative AI and Libraries, Claiming Our Place in the Center of a Shared Future. And so as I kind of already mentioned, I don't see AI as being like, front and center of what I do day to day or what I should be doing as the instruction librarian. But I think that libraries really can, and according to this book, maybe should have a central role in how we're shaping our patron skills and supporting them as this becomes more involved in our daily lives. So one of the strategies in this book for librarians and library workers really includes just knowing what tool to use and when. So that's one important reason why I'm going to talk about both Chat and Gemini. Why would you use one versus the other? Now, the other thing, I'm going to scoot to my next slide. The other big thing is this book is huge on just the human centeredness of the use of these AI tools. So I think that, we're used to being like, we're like, hey, you perform this task for me. You answer this question for me. And so we're like the user. But I think we have to shift this thinking to becoming both the maker and the user of these outputs. Rarely the first thing you get is the thing that you should be using, whether it's just a simple question and answer or a tool you're developing, like a Pathfinder or an app for your library website. So I want to empower you folks to create and edit tools and resources that are made by humans, that are made to be used by humans, so that that's not taken out and you don't get left with AI slop, I think is the, the latest lingo I keep hearing everywhere. All right, let's begin with Gemini. So Gemini has powerful capabilities like ChatGPT that can enable librarians to develop specific tools specific to your programming, your resources. Things like it can help with cataloging, content creation, and user engagement. I also want to disclose that this is according to Gemini. I asked Gemini, what can you do for librarians? And this is more or less what it said. I just made it sound a little bit more like me. All right, so this is just a little screenshot. If you haven't, again, explored Gemini, you can enter a prompt and just chat, use it as a chatbot. I also want to point out that underneath this sort of chat box, you can create images, you can write something or have it write for you. You can help it break down complicated things. I don't know what Boost My Day is. That's very interesting. So I encourage you folks to get saucy and click on that and figure out what that is. Let's see, here's another screenshot. This is something that I took a professional development workshop with our fabulous Educational Media Center. Shout out to some of my colleagues are in the house at this presentation. And we explored Gemini Gems. This is one feature on the Gemini AI platform where you can kind of create these roles and you can provide it with as much information as you want. Things like, for instance, I created an outreach librarian. My hope is that this would streamline some of the emailing that I do with faculty. Especially I manage our information literacy program, and there's so many emails related to adding a module in Lamaku for information literacy, accessing the exam, setting the due date and score for the quiz, and so on. So I thought, if I create this role, this is something where I can populate all the answers to questions, and then I can quickly, correctly, and efficiently get back to our faculty on campus with answers. So that's one example of a gem. There are existing gems that are listed up top. I have 4 pinned here. I think there are maybe a dozen. Things like helping with coding, a brainstorming person, a learning coach or tutor. So you can imagine, I think a role as a reference librarian could potentially be very helpful with things like advising readers or patrons who need help with research. I think it would be something worth investigating. So if you were to click on that little pencil icon for my outreach librarian Gemini, it would look like this, another screenshot. So you name it, describe it, you provide it with instructions. You know, you're a librarian. This is your role. You can upload documents. It can link to your library website for information, but it's not the best at it. It's not the best at it. It is integrated with the internet, but you know, if you have things like, let's say, a drop-down menu on your website, Gemini might miss that and not access the information it needs to answer questions. So I think the safest bet, what I would recommend, is to just download things like, let's say, FAQs or your opening hours and so on. Download that into a document that you can upload here to inform this Gemini gem if you choose to create it. So that's one example, one feature, one little room, if you will, in Gemini is this gems. Another one I wanted to talk about is ChatGPT. Oh, and I'll come back at the end, by the way, when we stop recording. I have examples of creating images in GEMS as well as, or I'm sorry, Gemini, creating images in Gemini and then working on your GEMS. So I have some examples to share in a library guide that I've already created. But let's move on a little bit and talk about ChatGPT, which is probably one of the first generative AI tools that you've heard about or started playing with, exploring. And so something I thought I wanted to share today is just how you can go beyond the chat feature to help you create tools and resources for your libraries. So, of course, it can answer questions and generate content. Maybe you want ideas for a workshop series or a reading club. But I think the thing that I'm excited about and something that I really recommend you folks explore a little bit is creating no code coding. This is sometimes called vibe coding. Let me just go ahead and show you. So this is a slide I literally added this morning right before the session because when I went to go open up all of these tabs to share with you folks, this was a brand new thing that just happened to be there. So I was prepared to show you that if you just chat with ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to develop an app to be embedded in a LibGuide, library guide for doing the crap test and make it like the game memory. And it will bring you code. It will generate code for you. But then today when I went to go open it up, it had this idea honing for vibe coding specifically. I don't know if this is on everyone's ChatGPT or if it's special just for me because I've been experimenting with vibe coding. But vibe coding is great because you don't know how to code. You don't have to know how to code. You ask for the development of an app or a tool. It gives you the code and it shows you it. Will preview what it looks like, and then it also will provide you with the code. Now, yet again, just like with images, just like with question and response chatting, it's rarely perfect. So you can copy and paste that code into, for example, a LibGuide, and it will probably not work. But luckily, LibGuides will tell you what's wrong. You can go back to ChatGPT and say, here's what LibGuide said, it's not showing up. They will fix the code. You try again. Maybe it takes more than once, but then boom, you'll have a really interesting, interactive, sometimes app that you can put on your library website or your library guides. And this has been something I've been exploring, and I'm excited to share with you the little things I've developed. So vibe coding, very cool. So kind of as a quick recap, Gemini and Chat are great chatbots. They can question and answer. Gemini is super good if you're doing like deep research, if you want to create images. ChatGPT also good with images, and both can do coding, but I've experimented quite a lot with ChatGPT and have been really pleased with the tools and apps it produces. So just some ideas that I want to throw out before I turn it over to you folks that I really hope that your fingers are itchy. You can't wait to drop some ideas and suggestions. So in our libraries, you can use generative AI tools to create pathfinders. You can automate your FAQs. You can make personalized recommendations for specific readers instead of having to keep things kind of generic. Is there anything else? I'm going to stop sharing my slides, but you don't have to stop recording. Is there anything else you folks maybe have used or are curious about using AI tools to create something interesting for your libraries or organizations? You can turn on your video, you can type in the chat, you can just shout it out.
I guess I'll chime in here. In our library at University of Hawaii at Manoa, I know that Jonathan Young has and Jean Tholag have used, I think it's ChatGPT to classify the answers that are in our reference tracking software so that they can, kind of use a rubric to classify those, and then they can determine whether or not the students who are answering the questions are appropriately referring those questions that they are supposed to refer. In other words, they take all the questions, they classify them, and then they can look at it and say, well, this is a reference question. Did the student worker at the circ desk refer that one, or did they answer it themselves? Do we need to do more training here?
That's awesome. I think, yeah, staff development, professional development is something that definitely these tools can be harnessed for. Brian says he uses it to summarize articles for Scholar Space. And one thing that, it's a tool I've been using increasingly is Notebook LM, another Google, another room in the Google generative AI super app. Some of the law profs have looked into using it for drafting abstracts. Wow, very interesting. Yeah. So with all of these things, I think you can tell before you even explore how important the human-centeredness is. You can't just like, for instance, develop a staff training, not taking into account your specific staff members, their expertise and knowledge, their personalities, and so on. Podcasts for students, Tanya. Yeah, I've played with that a little bit in Notebook LM as well, another Google tool. And so that's something where I think with a lot of the fatigue of lots of reading in college and university, it's a great option to create audio and a good way to synthesize things that are hard, difficult to understand, across different platforms like books and articles, YouTube videos, and more to bring it all into one place along with your own notes, teaching, and then like make it audio. It sounds professional, sounds good. I want to thank you folks for sharing. Okay, I'm going to share. Oh, sorry, Christina's going to add in. Thank you for adding to the combo, folks. It's so scary to do these alone. Have used for collection inventory, comparing files generated versus our inventory device to expected holdings in the catalog. Awesome. I want to thank you folks for sharing. Sometimes it'll take something they've done to connect a dot or create a little light bulb above our heads. Create code to bulk calendar events in Outlook. Tanya, I'm stealing that one. All right, I'm going to switch back to my slides. Let me open up my screen. I'm going to kind of toggle between a few screens just to kind of show you folks what I went over in slides. I was nervous to stop the slides, start and stop, and get caught in a tangent. So I'll kind of go in the order that I was exploring things. So let's see. This was ChatGPT. And again, when I landed on it this morning, just to kind of make sure everything's signed in and ready to go, I had this GPT that says idea honing for vibe coding. So again, it's really neat. Like, create code for an app to be embedded into a LibGuide, dot, dot, dot. It could be like for anything you're working on. My specific tool that I created, or I should say apps that I created, my issue I was having was I have a lot of library guides with a lot of good information, but I'm just hoping and praying that students and faculty are reading it and not, being bored to death. And I've embedded videos and things like that, but I wanted to make it more interactive. I've explored a little bit with, oh my gosh, what's it called? H5P. I'm so embarrassed. Anyway, but that was the idea, was like, how do I make this website a little bit more interactive? So here's what I did. This is a library guide for artificial intelligence chatbot specifically. And I created a new tab where I could just kind of play around and drop things in. So I'll come back to this image. But for instance, like I said, if I wanted students to search Google Scholar and it will like send them to an outside website, but I thought, oh, I can embed that in and embed a search. Is that possible? And so I just asked ChatGPT, can I make like a search box within my library guide? And sure enough, it did. So if I do, oh, I should probably spell things correct, but social media and mental health was the recommendation. So sure, let's do that. When I search Google Scholar, it connects. And I was just like, wow, this is terrific. So that's something that just makes it my library guide a little bit more alive. Going back here, things like a crap test, memory game. So it's like, okay, what's relevance? And then you come down here. Why does it exist? Is it, let's see. Oh gosh, now I'm going to do bad because I'm in front of a room. But just trying to make it a little bit more interesting than like an image. Like this is the crap test. Currency is this relevant. Something to make it a little bit more fun. Same here. This is just an overview for my InfoLit exam. And so this is something where it talks about sources and you click on each one to learn a little bit more. I made a citation generator, MLA ninth edition style, so students, instead of going to something like a CiteMe or BibMe, they could do it within maybe the library citation guide if I were to add this, and it's pretty good. So if I do like myself, my book is obviously called AI Tools for Librarians. I hope U of H Press is going to publish this, and then there's my citation that I can copy and paste. Probably not perfect, but the little bit I've done, it's been pretty good. And then lastly, I wanted to show you this cute little image. I created this yesterday. It says Leeward Library, check it out. But this I created in Gemini. And so I started by saying, create an image that looks like an old-fashioned political campaign pen. It has a reading slogan. Like, I don't know. I didn't even know where to start, right? But I just wanted to create an image. It makes this, and I said, can you make the background invisible? Apparently not. So you have to ask again. Okay, can you remove this? And can you please make it invisible? Okay, now they did it. Can you center it? And then I'm just looking at it like, this is not good. This is not a cool image. And I hope it's not my lack of creativity, right? So I said, let's just try something different. And so I said, make it look kind of 70s, kind of Hawaiian. And it came up with this. I didn't like the pineapple. I said, you got to remove this guy. And then maybe add some books. And so I just wanted to say again that if you take the first image, I think that would be a big old mess. And that it's really important that you are creating what's in your mind and your heart, what's going to appeal to your patrons, and that you really, really use these tools to project your own voice, to express your own creativity. Something that I wish I could shake every one of our students and really impart in them is these tools are so powerful. I think it's easy to feel like these tools are smarter than me, or I'd rather submit a paper that's perfect and free of grammatical errors than to, project my own voice, to amplify my own thoughts and opinions, my own research. And I just don't think that's true. I think that these tools can help you project, refine, create, but that really it's a tool for your voice. It's a tool for your creativity. It's a tool to connect. And it's not just something that we should just use and try to make something so flawless that we end up with a bunch of robotic slop. And okay, sorry, returning to my slides, I just have my last little basically Mahalo slide that I want to share before we stop our recording. So back to the presentation. I hope that over the last 25 minutes or so, you've learned or relearned a little bit more about both the Gemini and ChatGPT generative AI platforms and tools. I hope that you're already using tools to make your lives a little bit easier and simpler, to bring your creative voice to the forefront. I really do encourage you to reach out to me. I learned so much, and that's the thing I enjoy most. It's not creating images or tools or stressing about this. It's speaking to my colleagues and others about their thoughts and their experiences using generative AI tools, which are just so abundant and ever evolving. So mahalo again for attending or watching the recording. Please email me at ncon@hawaii.edu and mahalo. That's what I got for the prez. Let's cut the recording.